I want to apologize for any and all for the actions and the issues that you experienced, and really focused on what you experienced, and then you as leaders in San Antonio, in your cities, that we look up to and we believe that we should follow your lead. You personally had to endure both your own issues related to the winter storm, as well as being someone that your constituents look up to and look for answers. And we are still dealing with the issues that were very well clearly revealed of the gaps that happen locally. I will tell you that we have multiple areas that we know we have to work on and that we own. We are painfully aware of the Texas-wide issues that ultimately we have tremendous issues with overall. And so from a reliability standpoint, a lot of work happening, and you will be able to ask my team and I questions about it. Just for clarity, Paul Barham is a long-term veteran with over 30 years experience in many areas of the company, but he's heading up the grid optimization and resiliency aspect of the organization. For me, very much was boots on the ground with him and his team in terms of how we had to respond to ERCOT and what it looked like here in San Antonio for end customers. You also have Frank Alvarez here, who is now our chief over power, sustainability, and business development, and very much had a clear view of what was happening, again, from an ERCOT standpoint, and what was happening in power generation. They are actually new to their specific roles. They've been elevated in the company, promoted. We had some transition from this winter event, timing issue, but we continually work on our people and optimize their strengths and abilities. And then also Rudy Garza, who had is over our customer engagement and outreach areas, corporate comms. So he and I very much were shoulder to shoulder during the event, trying to get information out, trying to answer questions, and trying to help John Liao and his team address those issues. But again, I can't apologize enough, from what you experienced. I do want to give you a little bit of context. I appreciate your patience in letting me share a couple of things with you before we jump into questions. And just I think that may answer some of your questions and then help us as we go into a conversation very, very soon. So what John had shared with you previously is we have been trying to answer some of the obvious big questions early on. I tried to do a presentation several weeks after the storm, but then also followed it up the next week with more context from the senior chiefs that you see here and a few others. And again, I still think it's important that we keep answering your questions, and as many times as we need to go over things and then tell you where we see our opportunities for improvement, and also continue to take your suggestions about what we need to do better on. But I do want to give some context. This presentation is actually posted on our website, and you can actually hear each leader talking about the storm at more length. So if your staff members want to listen to it, and there may be some more questions you have from that, we welcome that. I want to jump around a bit. This is from our board meeting, and so the page numbers are odd. It's because they're part of a big board package. Hey, John, I'd like to go to slide 119.
Paula, what would be the title section on that one?
The title on a seasonal plant readiness. That's PDF, 19, slide 9 also. So go back one.
There you go.
Thank you. So the big thing, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about, operators not weatherizing their plants. We don't know exactly what every other utility did, and we definitely, again, believe that there are opportunities to improve what we did, but I do want to assure you that the CPS Energy team did work on weatherization, and Frank will be able to answer more questions about it in detail. But I want to kind of share the issue around it. 2011 was considered an extremely difficult outage. We had outages at the time, and the whole outage management process lasted about 7 hours. This one lasted 70, and this one had more intense weather and then it's a duration of the storm, as you well know and experience, that was the problem for us. But I want to assure you that we made those efforts. In Texas, we've always had a statewide, it's because it's hot here, right? We're closer to the equator. So the focus has always been on summer peak. It's because you're always trying to prepare for the period from June to September. And constantly utilities are getting instruction from ERCOT in the background. You don't normally have to worry about that, telling us to tighten up our operations, keep our plants on. And we do all this maintenance all year long after September to keep those plants running in that period. What we do in design, and some people said, well, this is not rocket science. Alaska has power plants and they run in very cold weather consistently. But Alaska typically, I've lived there before, it typically doesn't have hot periods. So they're always planning for a winter peak and we're always planning for a summer peak. Because of that, we are always trying to take hot air off. We're always trying to use water to cool the plants. And so that we have more exposure in terms of our ventilation systems and our piping systems. What this shows you right here, when we are weatherizing, we're creating temporary structures, scaffolding, thick plastic, which typically provide a pretty good perspective on weatherization. But they have to come down at the end of the winter period so that, again, we're ready to take heat away. And so I know people have asked this question, why is it different? It is different because the regional aspects of what we have really kind of dictate that we're not enclosing the plant completely. If we enclose the plant to do that, we actually would hold too much heat in over the summer, and we would cause either danger to people who are in the plant working, or we could cause catastrophic failure, and the plant could actually, not be able to come back after some, major malfunction, equipment failure. So that's a bit of a difference here. I want to then go to slide 120, the next one. One down. So this, again, I think we all knew that it was cold. I think we thought that we really had seen the worst of the cold season. This is what the forecast looked like on February 1. Next slide. And a week later, this is what the forecast looked like. And this is right before we started seeing bad weather, ice, prices started to increase shortly after this. And what the real issue is, that dark blue, those gradations of blue, that dark blue, what was the worst thing about it is you start to see that it covers all of ERCOT. And typically also what happens, we're such a big enough state that usually when the weather's bad in the north, it's better in the south, and we could send power to the rest of the grid, or vice versa. If we're having really bad weather for whatever tropical hurricane, the north is not having a problem. This was one of the first times that we've seen the whole state covered with the same experience, and not just temperatures below freezing. We also design our plants to operate below freezing, but now when you're getting closer to zero, and in some cases with wind chill, negative temperatures, those are really difficult for Texas to handle. You go to slide 24. I'm sorry, Don, go back to slide 122. That's called weatherization. I just want to show something else. It's it'll say 12 on the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, this is another example. So we actually spent $17 million to weatherize the plant, and again, in the temporary way I described. But again, one of the things to highlight is part of what we do is we have to take exposed lines and try to insulate them. We will take heating coils in some cases to put around it and then insulate it again to make it work. And so we did do weatherization. And what I'm just highlighting here for you is an example of, again, something that Frank could better explain. But if you see this line there in the middle that looks tan, it's insulated. We insulated it. The challenge that we had, and it's also an 8-inch line, and it's pushing water through. And what we saw and experienced at the plant was that it actually froze. Now that dynamically would have never happened in 2011. But it did happen in 2021. We are going to, as an industry, have to go back as an industry, not just CPS Energy, and redesign what we have to plan for in terms of intensity, and assume that what people have often called a 100-year event is maybe not a 100-year event, considering climate and climate science tells us that things have changed and are currently changing. But again, I share this with you just as information, not as an excuse in any way, but as context. Again, did we weatherize? We did. Did we still have challenges? We did. Now, John, if you would go to slide 124, which is called natural gas price surge. In the bottom right-hand corner is slide 14. So at the time, every single technology we had struggled. Wind and solar struggled, but they're not supposed to produce in the winter. They're great solutions in the summer, but they're not supposed to perform. So that was natural. The weather would have, the strong freezing temperatures froze, wind blades. The cloudy temperature associated with the storm patterns just prevented solar from truly, being optimized. But that was okay. We expected that. You couldn't keep your battery systems going. We have small ones, but we couldn't get them going because once you discharge that battery, you can't recharge it. And the concept is, if you have a 1 kilowatt hour of power, you don't want to charge something, you want to send it to a home. We had a coal unit problem. We had an equipment failure there. STP had an exposed line. They had about an 8-foot line that they failed to insulate. They insulated all around the plant, missed that one spot, and had to bring the system down. There was no catastrophic issue with it, but when you bring nuclear down, you got to bring it all the way down, recheck the diagnostics, double check that nothing other error happened, and then you bring it back up, and it takes like a day to bring that plant back up. So it was pretty much not available to us. But then we had natural gas. So natural gas is key for some of the plants, quite a few of the plants that we use. And we also need it because of the natural gas systems, just getting that for your cooking and certain equipment needs in your home. And what happened is right away, we saw this surge. And by far, we saw the price of natural gas was probably somewhere around the $3.25 range, double and triple. But before we knew it, during the event, we saw prices of $400, and then we saw some higher, which basically equates to a percentage increase in the price of gas of 15,000%. That turned into an escalation of power prices of almost 30,000%. And we've never seen anything like that by far. And this is why CPS Energy currently is holding about $1 billion of cost, over $1 billion of an incremental cost on its balance sheet. For less than a week of bad weather at $1 billion, that's more money than we have in our budget for the year. And this is why you've seen us talk openly about our belief that the pricing that ultimately happened during the event was kind of insult to injury. After the liability crisis, we're now in an affordability crisis. There are entities across the state that are failing, that are going bankrupt. We don't have that issue, but what we have is an issue of cost and potential high bills, and we're fighting. We're fighting using, we're talking to policymakers. We're looking for funds at the federal and state level. We're trying to negotiate, lower prices, because we believe in the middle of a declared disaster by the governor and the president, no one should have done this. To give you an example, we've run some numbers. That would be like going to the gas pump during the middle of a storm, trying to take care of your family and your employees. And when you show up, instead of a $3 cost per gallon, you got about a $350 plus cost for the gallon, and it would take you about $6,000 to $7,000 to fill your tank. We are outraged. Again, we're not trying to say that there aren't things that we need to fix. We think we need to fix our communication. We think we need to fix the way that we manage outages. We need to have a better way to have a community-wide alert system, and many other things that we want to hear from you that you think we need to focus on. But what we do think that there were systemic issues at the state that drove people to want to increase prices in the middle of a crisis, and take what was already hard to do in terms of get citizens warm, and then use it as profit to gouge. And we believe that in the fight, CPS Energy in particular in San Antonio are being bullied because we're complaining. But it's okay, because we're going to complain. We will pay all fair and reasonable, legitimate charges, but we will fight the insult to injury issue that we have as a community. If we do not stand now to do this, that means every time there's an issue in the future, and by God, I hope we never have another. But if it did, that means anybody could take license to take opportunity against citizens of Texas and citizens of our community. So I'm going to end with that. There's some other things that happened. And again, I realize that many of you woke up and without power on. The surge happened in about an hour before, when we were told to go into manage outages. And you can only, the way it's designed now, the nodes aren't specific enough. The circuits are big, and so there's only about a third of the systems that we could take down without causing critical care issues and without disrupting the frequency of the grid and being the community that in turn caused the crash, because we're looking at our frequency, and when you start taking those ones down, you take the whole system down. So a third of the community experienced the brunt of long-term outages to help the grid stay up. And we are looking for ways to change that, to improve our grid management system and our outage management system. We have to, and we understand the concerns. And we also understand that you want to talk to us about your critical facilities and what we can do there. And we want to talk to you also about how to work together in terms of what communities can do in terms of backup generation and power. We want to lend our experience to you. Technology is not perfect, and we want to partner with you from that standpoint. We have many, many things to fix, but we want to work with you in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Real good information. What we'll do, if everybody's agreeable, we will transition to Frank Alvarez, as he's the Chief of Power Sustainability and Business Development. From a couple of different angles, Frank will discuss not as much as what transpired, but more the things that he and his teams are looking at doing as we move forward into the new standard for winterization of power plants and his equipment, et cetera. I'll turn it over to Frank, and then we'll pause after Frank goes for a little bit, and then we'll do some Q&A specific from the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John, and appreciate Paula's comments. That's a lot of good context that will set up a couple things that I'll note here. Um, Two real quick additional bits of context, and then I'll talk some about some information I think you'll find useful. The first bit of context is uh, January 3rd, 2018, we set our winter peak for CPS Energy in San Antonio. Uh, this event, by the way, 2018 was not a load shed year. We said the last one was in 2011, and that's right. But because Paula mentioned, we're an interconnected grid, and it really has to be the case that you have peak consumption across the entire state at the same time, which rarely happens. That's part of why our setting of our winter peak in 2018 didn't result in any issues statewide. But the thing I want to note about that is that this event, we reached and surpassed that winter peak by 14% before the curtailment that ERCOT directed us to undertake even started. And if we had not been forced to curtail our load, our customers, we would have been in excess of our previous summer peak too. Now that's kind of a stunning statistic, and I think it really causes us to go back and think about a lot of design considerations and a lot of it sets up a couple things that I'm going to mention in a second. The second thing is that people often think about the crushing heat of the summer and say to themselves, well, if you can handle the summer peak, how can it be that a winter peak would be at anywhere close to that? And I think the answer is, I'll try to illustrate. In the summer, let's say it's 105 degrees outside. I mean, that is really, really hot. I'm going to make the math easy by taking some round numbers. 105 degrees. And you want to be 75 degrees. Of course, we'd be asking you to be at 78, right? But if it's, let's say you're trying to get to 75 degrees, that's 30 degrees that your home or business has to reduce the temperature from 105 to 75. And that's helped by the level of insulation that you have. But now let's say that it's 25 degrees outside and you want to get your temperature to, let's say you want to get to 70. So that's 45 degrees of temperature move that you have to make, a good bit more than from in the heat. So one thing that's just not intuitive to everybody, but does help illustrate why loads get so high in the winter is because you're actually trying to move the temperature in your home or business a lot more to warm it than you are to cool it. Paula mentioned our weatherization efforts, and I won't go into that. She mentioned that we spent $17 million after the 2011 event. What I do want to mention is just expanding on Paula's comment about every technology having difficulty. We were 86% available, our generation units were during the event. Of the times when we weren't available, half of those were due to mechanical type problems. These are the types of things that can fail anytime. These are big complex machines, as you all know, and valves, fail, fans, burn out, and so on. About 25% of the times when we had issues was related to our ability to deliver fuel to the units. And that's primarily natural gas, and that's, again, driven by freezing wellheads and processing stations having difficulty. And now, so the next highest cause was freezing. About 13% of our the difficulty that we experienced during the event was due to things that you would categorize as freezing or weatherization, and then about the same was due to instrumentation and control type failures. Now, with all that in mind, we think about the next steps, and others will talk about it, and Paula did, about the critical need for communications, really effective communications across our community and really across the state as well. But there's another aspect to it that we're thinking about, and one of the ways that we communicate with our customers, you see it more often in the summertime, but we have to rethink this a bit, is winter communications around peak load reduction, peak use reduction. This community has done a fantastic job. We had a very successful program of asking our customers to participate with us during the summer and reduce demand, there is the additional benefit of the communication to be able to talk with our customers in advance about what's coming and the expectation that the winter weather or summer weather might be really extreme. And also is there, make suggestions for ways that they can participate in helping keep the lights on in our community and bills low. The next thing is resiliency is a top of mind type of word. Obviously, there's things that we need to do better to make sure that we are making our system as strong as possible to avoid issues in the first place. But Paula mentioned this 100-year event idea. I mean, I don't know what that is anymore. I mean, I think I said it, at the board presentation or something, kind of talking about it, thinking it through. But the more I reflect on it, I don't know what a 100-year event is at this point, and we have to be really thoughtful about how to size that and make sure that we are taking care to be resilient in the event that something does happen. If you build to a 100-year standard, it means someday that will happen. And if the consequences are unacceptable, as they were in this case, I mean, you have to ask yourself what additional resiliency measures that we can take. Paula mentioned the design basis of the weatherization. I won't go into that. Fuel supply strategy. I think there's some things that we need to think about there. There's the physical supply of actually getting your natural gas, your coal, your fuel oil to your location to be able to make sure that you can use that fuel to make power. And then there's the financial aspect of it, of hedging and other financial type instruments that we can use to make sure that bills stay affordable. And I think both of those are in focus. The amount of storage that we have is a question that one of our board members asked. That's a question that we're analyzing today, and making sure that we have contracts that are flexible enough to support our needs during the peaks is really important. I think the last thing that I'll mention is we are engaging in conversations with policymakers, from elected officials to economists to regulators, and we think it's really important that our voice as a municipally owned utility, as your service provider, make our voice heard, because we're different than other market participants, and we want to be sure that our interests, which are your interests, are well protected and well represented. So we are very much active in that discussion, and we will continue to remain so in the months to come, and potentially many months. This is a complex set of issues that require a multidisciplinary approach, systems thinking, and we are ready, willing, and able, and currently engaging in that effort at the state level. Those are the comments that I had, and I think it's questions now.
Yes, we're happy to open up for questions from our audience members. You will need to unmute yourself using the WebEx feature in order to ask a question, or you can type in the chat a question for Frank.
Or me. Actually, you can ask whatever question you'd like.
I'm checking for any raised hands in the chat feature at the moment. Oh, yeah, we got one from Kim Turner. Kim Turner. Kim, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, this is Kim Turner, Universal City. Not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. I personally would like to thank CPS for all the effort that you put out during the winter storm. I know it was extremely stressful. It was stressful for the city's perspective as well. But really just having the ability to call Melissa Cox and to hear a voice from CPS was so reassuring for the city. And, I felt for Melissa, she was under the same stress as every other household was. But yet, no matter what time of the day I called, she answered the phone. She didn't always have the answer, but at least from the city's perspective, I can say, yes, we've reached out to CPS. Here's what the situation is. Here's what they can do. Here's what they cannot do. And that was enough to dissuade a lot of the stress that was happening during that time. So thank you to CPS, and a special thank you to Melissa for always taking my call.
Thank you, ma'am.
Team, we are on schedule. I'm going to propose that we switch over to Paul Barham, Chief of Grid Optimization and Resiliency. Paul?
Good morning. Can you hear me all right? All right, good. So glad to be here. And, so Frank and Paula talked about, the generation aspect and so the part of the grid that is supplying power and, some of the things that impacted that. Once the grid is short on generation and does not have enough generators, enough power being produced to meet all the customer demands, that's what results in this load shed scenario that we got into. And I know a lot of the questions that got from y'all ahead of time had to do with, the management of that, in particular around the critical circuits and critical customers. Who are these critical customers? How do we come up with that? How do I get on that list? And, and we are having that discussion really across the community. And I will tell you that our critical circuit list, and this is something that Rudy's team and I and my team work on jointly, and he'll probably address it further, but we're really having to back up and rethink that whole list because if you ask what kind of things are on it, it's a wide variety of things, but being military city, USA, military is a big one. And you would probably be amazed how many circuits are impacted by military or I'll say security infrastructure. And those are critical loads to, to our areas as well as, national defense, obviously. Hospitals, SAWs, even though, as y'all heard in the news, there was, maybe a drop ball or two with SAWs, there are a number of SAWs facilities that they have identified to us as being critical, and those are on these critical circuits. Fire and police, now let me, y'all hear fire and police departments are on the list, but let me clarify, every fire station and every, police office is not identified as a critical load. There's too many of them. We would have basically all our circuits tied up with those. So when we say fire and police, it's like just the most critical, such as the 911 center and the emergency operations center, those types of functions. The airport, obviously the airport has to, maintain some type of minimal functionality. So they are also on that list, as well as critical data centers. Frank talked about natural gas supply to the plants. Well, natural gas processing and compression stations are one of those things that are on our list that, we can't impact those facilities or we start impacting our power plants. Critical communication towers. So when you start thinking about all the infrastructure it takes to even just maintain the, we'll say the most critical functions in our community, that starts turning into a lot of different things across our city. And as Paula mentioned, with our current infrastructure, we have to shed a whole circuit at a time. We can't, we don't have the ability to pinpoint this one hospital on a circuit and maintain that, but take out the rest of the circuit. That's just not part of our infrastructure to do that right now. So there's this basically a capacity issue that we got into where mentioned about a third of the circuits are available for load shed, and that's after you've taken out a third that are associated with protection from this under frequency or low frequency event, and take away the critical customers. You're left with about a third that we can actually use for load shed. Not enough capacity in this case, where we had this event where ERCOT was needing 5 times the amount of power reduced than we had seen in the previous event. That, I mean, you know, the scale of these things, as Paula was talking about, compared to past events, is just, from our perspective, just mind-boggling. And it's almost hard to describe just the difference in magnitude of this event compared to previous events. And I'll say perceived inequality around, you know, why was my circuit down for so long, and I can see the circuit down the road was never down. That was essentially just a capacity issue to reach the levels of load shed that we had to go to just to maintain the grid. We were basically pulling in everything we possibly could. So I don't want to spend all my time talking about the event, because y'all have heard about that. But moving forward, as I said, one of the big things we're doing right now is we're looking at our critical loads. And I know, you know, y'all probably have, you know, pumps and different things that y'all would like identified. I would say, let us know what those are, and we will put those in the mix. And we're going to be looking for solutions on how we can better manage and maybe combine some of these things. Maybe there's some circuit reconfigurations we can do that will help us in essentially building capacity for load shed while still protecting those most critical circuits. Probably in the more mid to longer term, we are looking at what are the technology options for getting to a better space. I know one of the questions was around, why didn't we use AMI? We know y'all can disconnect customers using AMI. Great question. We have asked the same thing and had actually looked at the same thing prior to this event. There are some limitations there, although we are starting to talk with our AMI provider to look at options around that. And there's not simple answers there, but we think there may be opportunities around that. I've mentioned possibly doing some redesign, reconfiguration of circuits that may gain us some capacity, as well as looking at building additional switching capabilities into our circuits. Now, this is certainly longer-term infrastructure. It's an a fair size investment on our part that will take time. But through all these different options, we hope to get to a better place of being able to protect some of those most critical assets. But I think in the end, we'll have to look at and work with our customers on, we will not be able to protect everything. And I think, at that point, we want to partner with y'all as well as other customers who have things that really need consideration. And, we want to help y'all look at what are those backup systems that may be out there, and are there ways we can work with y'all to, aggregate and maybe get better pricing on some of those issues, some of those options. So we're trying to really look at the gamut of things from technology down to really, customer-sided solutions as well. Number of lessons learned that we're looking at across our business, in the wire side of the business, to really make this a more load shed is never going to be a enjoyable scenario. That's a given. But we do know we need to get it to a place where it is much more manageable and palatable, even if we get to some of these large events like we experienced. And so that's what we're focused on at this point. And I will end my comments there, but be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paul. And as a reminder to our participants, you can utilize *6 to come off mute as well. *6. Feel free to raise a hand in the participant area or into the chat feature. Or please, I think we had someone come off mute, one of our phone numbers.
I think Paula had a comment to add.
Oh, please.
Just real quickly, as people are thinking about their questions to frame, the one thing that Paul said that I do want to highlight, we experienced the San Antonio, horrific event. It was terrible. This was an issue, though. You saw the same experiences happen across Texas. And in particular, what Paul said is, we're managing this circuit, the outages through the circuit process. This solution that we have to have actually is a whole industry, because everybody pretty much does it the same. You're going to go circuit by circuit. And so it's interesting. There isn't as Paul was explaining, there isn't anything on the shelf that was, sitting there ready, available to the industry. And there isn't anything for us to pull down off the shelf to just make this outage management more accurate and help us smooth out the experience for everyone and challenge that. But it is not going to stop us from looking at alternatives. AMI does seem like it's the obvious, but it is meant for a completely different purpose, for it to have the right level of functionality. There would be some connectivity issues, and then increased security things that we would have to do around the system. That's a major redesign. And in fact, we could be something completely different than the AMI system that sits on top. So and that every single utility, I think, across the nation is thinking through this. But I do want to assure you, it wasn't just a San Antonio, it's an industry thing. Again, something now that we haven't seen ever before. We've got to figure out some new solutions to, but the team under Paul is already looking at these solutions, talking to other think tanks and applied research entities, and really kind of driving vendors to rethink what they're serving, how they're serving, and what they're offering. So we will keep pushing on that front.
I want to add a comment to our partners here. If you are, and I believe some of the cities are looking at doing this type of investment, if you're interested in on-site backup solutions, backup generation, whether it be natural gas or diesel, please keep us and the team in the loop. We're happy to help with resources, some thinking for in front of and behind of the meter, and also some things to think about. And Rudy will probably remember the date better than I do, but I'm going to go with June 6, 2018 was when, now, NOAA didn't say it was a set of tornadoes, but the infrastructure that we saw damaged, there are weather events that could happen here, even in San Antonio, that are far beyond what we experienced with Winter Storm Uri. High winds can play they can quite frankly just wreck our system. No matter how we prepare for them. Tornadoes are especially one of those type of incidents. Having an on-site solution for your most critical infrastructure that helps your communities, keep us in the loop, whether it be volume pricing or helping with RFI or RFP. Consider us part of the solution, as well as to all our 31 suburban cities. Only 4 have taken advantage of the additional 1% franchise fee. So right now you have as cities the ability with council authority to add a 1% jurisdictionally only to your community. It will look as a city fee on the bill, but very frankly, that can be used for resiliency, infrastructure, economic development, or to support any other fund that you might have within your community. Again, we are happy to help with that. It is an option that is available to you, and I and the team stand ready to assist.
Hey,
I want to see if there's any.
Do you
ma'am.
see anybody? Because I want to add something, but if there's someone, we can take that question, of course, first.
Go ahead, ma'am.
To emphasize what John is saying, that, you know, why our perspective is we do know a lot about backup systems. You typically find a lot of diesel, which we don't like because it's higher emitting, but it has been reliable. And there are other customers across San Antonio that have invested in backup systems. What probably way too much diesel, but increasingly we see some gas powered backup systems. We do see some batteries. We have some batteries on small systems. There are limitations and benefits with all of them. We did have customers that had that utilized their backup systems during the storm. And I do think that we can also give you advice about the size and duration to try to help you tailor what you want and to get the coverage that you want. We did have some entities that they didn't have enough fuel to fuel their generators. And so there's also a strategy about the supply. It was hard to get oil and probably diesel as well shipped into San Antonio because of the icy roads across the state. So there's a way to look at these backup systems that, again, we would very much want to offer our experience and knowledge and help in the evaluation process. We also believe that if the suburban cities band together, as highlighted before, there's a way to create additional leverage, and we have quite a bit of experience with that. And again, you know, for us, we want you to have more sustainability and resiliency. We are going to do additional efforts and investment on our part, but we think that if we partner and both do things together, we can optimize the benefits for you, for your constituents, and again, for the greater good of our community to be able to balance all the needs that are there. So it's not anything you have to do, obviously, but we definitely want to volunteer to be with you as you think about these solutions and again, bring our levels of expertise for that type of initiative.
Thank you, Paula. We'll transition now to Rudy Garza. Rudy has held a number of positions within our organization and other utilities as well. Rudy was most recently in charge of all our distribution systems and government relations. So Rudy's no stranger to this group. Thanks for joining us, Rudy. Please turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, John. And as always, I'm always delighted to speak to our suburban city partners, especially after an event like this. Paula has said it, and I'll keep saying it, you know, as long as I'm around here, and that is that, you know, CPS Energy prides itself on the service we provide to our customers. And, you know, we didn't wake up on Monday morning at 1:30 in the morning and look to shut our customers off. You know, it was a statewide energy emergency. And when you get into an energy crisis, you know, typically a water crisis and a food crisis and a fuel crisis for your vehicles. And there are so many ramifications to what happens in events like this that all materialized in the experience that our community and communities across the state of Texas, you know, faced during that horrible week. But again, you know, on behalf of me, my team, and the company, you know, you know, if you were in that group that saw multiple days of outages, that's certainly not the experience that we are trying to create for you. And certainly we're, you know, so sorry that our community had to go through that. I got a number of questions, and I'm going to try to kind of, you know, do a flow here that is comprehensive. We've got a lot of questions, not just from this group, but across the community about our efforts to communicate during the event. And I'd like to start there. We began communicating messages of conservation, you know, pretty much Paula showed the the differences in how the forecast changed from the 1st of February to the 9th of February. On the 10th of February, we started messaging to our community about conservation, and that conservation message continued. Quite frankly, it was conservation that ultimately helped us get out of it as customers recognized, that they needed to reduce their thermostats for those who had power to 68 degrees or below. It was 68 degrees, in my house, 65 degrees, throughout the period that we were in that situation. And we have very, kind of strict protocols when ERCOT is declaring emergency, alerts is what they call it, that we follow. ERCOT puts out a message, we follow it up with a message to our local community. I've said this before and I'll continue saying it. If one customer in our, community, didn't get the message of what was going on, then we've got work to do to continue to try to find that one method that, works for those customers who were not getting the message. I can tell you we utilized every tool in our toolbox to try to get the message out. I think there's a kind of a misnomer that Amber Alert system that folks were asking, hey, why aren't you using the Amber Alert system? That's a statewide system. We can't utilize that without authority, from the Texas, Emergency Management Division. And there are bills right now at the state legislature that will allow us to gain access to that system in the future for energy emergencies, which we believe is completely appropriate, and we're going to support those efforts. And there's multiple bills that would allow us to do that. But I can promise you that every day we had messaging going out. Just to kind of recap, when I say we used every toolbox, we sent out 9 news releases and media advisories. We did 34 interviews with English and Spanish language television stations and the Express News and the San Antonio Report and all the groups that we talk to on a regular basis. Paula and I did 5 media briefings throughout. Every time we felt like it was a good time to provide an update, we got together and sat on the phone with our media partners. We did 59 social media posts, Facebook posts, Nextdoor posts. We did 3. We have a system that allows us to call customers with an automated message. When we reach 650,000 of those customers who have a number on in our managed my account system, and we hit that 3 times, that reaches out to around 650,000 customers. And we engaged on Facebook 76,000 of our customers. We engaged directly on social media. So we tried really hard to be available and to connect. We know we've got to do better. We know that our coordination with the city and county, we were manning our seat at the Emergency Operations Center throughout the entirety of the event. I was on morning and afternoon calls with the city manager and the mayor, letting them know where we were so that the city could also use their channels to communicate. And I know we have a very robust partner engagement strategy at CPS Energy, so that every time we put out information, our board gets it, the San Antonio City Council gets it, Melissa and John, cascade that message to our suburban city partners and all the other folks that we interact with on a regular basis. So we try really hard, but that does not mean that there's not learning to be done from this. John, you had a hand up.
I do. Thank you. I believe we have Mayor Gonzalez from Lytle who needs to excuse himself, but he has come off mute, and I think he has a question for us.
Sure. And
Mayor.
This is Suburban Gonzalez, Mayor down in the city of Lytle. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely, sir.
Yes, sir.
I just want to, first of all, I want to apologize. For some reason, technical difficulties. We've used this application previous times with different meetings, and for some reason it wasn't going through. And then the phone itself. But don't want to miss the opportunity to thank Paul for the explanation on the question that I had about the infrastructure and the critical identities. I definitely want to partner. We want to partner with CPS to make sure that we address those, because I think within our communities, we can help you to figure out which areas are more critical than others. We actually were able to maintain our city by moving different things and providing generators, but it would have helped if we actually would have had certain facilities identified and work with those that are more permanent and then have the flexibility. We kept moving our police department around, so we worked around issues with the power being down to different facilities, but there's certain things like water booster pumps that we couldn't do anything about. So we definitely would like to be able to partner. But I didn't want to miss out the opportunity to thank Paul for the explanation. That's a huge thing, but also for Melissa Cox. I can't tell you, and just like folks in Universal City, she was a huge player of keeping us informed of what was going on and checking up on us and making sure that we were functioning. We actually held a huge responsibility. Our city is small, but we took care of South San Antonio and communities around us by being able to work a way to keep our HEB open and some food places open. We literally fed thousands of people. We ran out of food quickly, but we were able to take care of people during that time frame. So it's very important that we not only look at the suburban communities, but we look at the city, the metropolitan area, based on a regional basis, because we can take care of a lot of residents if we can actually keep certain facilities open to take care of their needs, especially when it came down to a warming area, a warming center, or getting some general food because there was just no power, there was nothing available during a particular period of time. But Melissa was a huge help, and I wanted to make sure that CPS actually was aware that she helped us a lot in being able to stay on track and be able to recover in a timely fashion. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to pass on my comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Well,
Before you continue,
yeah.
I do have a comment coming in from Mayor Dennis of Live Oak. As you know, Mayor Dennis also serves as an at-large member on our Citizen Advisory Committee. Mayor Dennis, I want to give you a moment to share any comments you might have. Mayor, if you're speaking, Mayor Dennis, you need to come off mute, either unmute using the WebEx feature or *6. Why don't we come back to Mayor Dennis? Rudy?
Sure. I'm going to try to briefly get through some of the other questions on my list so we can get to Q&A, and certainly, Paula can provide additional context. Once we came out of the reliability crisis, as we're, referring to it, the first action we took was to all right. Are we back? We immediately proceeded to start to look at our billing system and our data, so that, because we started to see in other areas of Texas that are open to the competitive market, these huge high bills that were starting to go out as a result of the affordability crisis, the tsunami, as Paul likes to call it, that we saw as a result of purchase power costs and fuel costs being exorbitantly applied during a disaster, which we'll spend some more time on here shortly. But we suspended our Manage My Account system and stopped sending bills out the Saturday after the event, concluded. And we really kept those systems off for a 2-week period because we wanted to be really sure that our customers weren't worried about, the astronomical bills. Typically, we pass fuel on, it's fuel costs. We don't make money on fuel. It's a direct pass through. And so as we started to see some of the bills come in, and the prices that the market, was showing as a result. We were buying all the gas we could get, and we couldn't even get some of the gas we were asking for because we were also trying to, pump it into our plants, keep our gas system flowing. So we were caught in a catch-22. You got to pay whatever the cost is because we were trying to get out of a reliability crisis, and we didn't want our customers worried about these $16,000 bills that social media was going nuts over that we were reacting to. So we paused our billing system to make sure that none of those charges were going to be immediately show up on the bills. And that was one of the questions I got is, how do you rebuild trust? Well, you rebuild trust by doing the right things one step at a time. The further away we get from this event, and the employees on this call and that are out in the field today, ensuring that you have power and energy that you need, we're the same people we were before this event. It was a horrible event. We know it was, but we're going to rebuild your trust by doing the right things every step of the way from here, forward, so that we can, rebuild that trust that you come to expect in CPS Energy. And part of that is knowing that your bill is accurate. And so the actions taken immediately after the event were comprehensive and strategic on our part. We paused the bills for 2 weeks to ensure that all the information was accurate. We've taken all those fuel costs and purchase power costs, and really the fuel costs, purchase power, we're paying as we are validating that the costs are accurate. We still got a system to run. So the interaction with ERCOT has been very strategic on our part to pay what we think is appropriate and fight where we think the fighting needs to occur. But all those fuel costs are parked on our balance sheet, have not been passed through. CPS Energy is a not-for-profit entity. The money we have to keep our operation going comes from our customers. And as we validate reasonable and justifiable costs resulting from the storm, we will start talking to the community about what that means, from a billing perspective. The reason that you saw $16,000, $20,000 bills in the competitive market is because retailers, according to the contracts that customers signed, had the ability to just pass those on immediately. We're not doing that. We're going to be thoughtful about whatever the ultimate impact is to our customers. We want to smooth that out. We want to come up with options that allow our customers long-term to be able to afford whatever that cost is. And we've got a very comprehensive financial strategy to try to address, that ultimately whatever those costs are going to be. But one of the questions is, will customers have to pay, for those costs? We're fighting to ensure our customers don't pay 1 penny more than we think is justifiable and reasonable. John?
Rudy, thank you. Mayor Dennis, you're unmuted now.
Thank you, John, and good morning to everyone. First, thank you, Paula and your team for being here. Rudy took the words out of my mouth, and that's the word trust. And we trust the CPS, that you are the same company that have for years provided energy, that we're able to go and turn that switch on and it comes on. And this was an event way beyond the control of any of us here in Texas. And so for that, I just want to say thank you to the men and women that were out in the field, that were taking calls, that were doing the very best they could in the situation that we were in. And I just have to say a special thank you to Melissa and the John and his team for how they were available to us. And for that, we're very appreciative. Of course, we were getting calls from our residents, and I was actually calling residents to check on them. And so for the most part, they were, did the best that they could with what we had to work with. So thank you to CPS Energy for being the company that you have been down through the years and will continue to be. And I know working together with the great team that you have, that we will figure this out and we will get through this together. So just thank you to you all for everything that you've done and that you will do to continue to make San Antonio and this community great.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor Dennis, we always appreciate your, commitment to CPS Energy, serving on our CAC, you're a wonderful partner, as are all of our mayors across our suburban cities have been great. Thank you. So I'm going to hit two other points, and then I'm going to turn it back over. So at whatever point in time in the future that we have to start talking to our customers about whatever the ultimate cost is, I think there's some concern that retroactively, if you had power, we're going to go back to February and hit you for, the usage that drove our fuel, costs up or whatever. I think there's just a misnomer that, that because you had power, we should have told you that we were telling you to conserve, but we're not going to retroactively apply a fuel charge. We will thoughtful plan together going forward for, whether it's April or May or whatever the time comes that we've got to start talking about, about the impact to our customers. That's going to be kind of a go forward basis. So I don't want you to think we're going to go back to February and apply, a charge because you had power. That's not the way we do things. We'll be thoughtful, and it'll be a prospective, not a looking back event. And then the last thing I'm going to cover is because we delayed bills for 2 weeks, some customers got one bill and then they got another bill right behind it. If you were in that 2 week period when you would have expected a bill. So we know that that's happened. The message that we sent to customers when we started releasing bills over the last couple of weeks has been, look, we're not applying late fees. If you need some time to work through the two bill impact, just give us a call and we'll work through that with you. But we don't want customers worried about, if you've got, two bills of, a couple $100 a piece or $150 a piece, we'll work with you to pay what you can over whatever amount of time, you can pay it. But we do recognize that there are some customers who got bills back to back, and we don't want anybody worried about getting hit with late fees or, having to pay all of that at once. We just ask that you call us to work through it with us, and our energy advisors are ready to talk through that with you. So I'm going to stop there. I just want to thank you again for being patient, for your partnership. We look forward to partnering with you on strategies for your communities going forward. We do know, and we've got a lot of questions from the county and the city and multiple cities, about, how do we create a system where we designate heating and cooling centers for the community going forward. I think that's going to be a conversation that we're going to have, from kind of an emergency management standpoint. How do you create those ahead of time so that, folks know where to go if they're out of power in a future event. Whether it's the summer or winter, we are working to be prepared whenever those events come so that our community knows what to do, where to go, and how to get help. So again, we thank you for your patience. We thank you for your partnership, and we thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Rudy. I'd like to give Paula an opportunity to make closing comments and for us to have any general roundtable questions as posed by our partners available today. Paula?
Yeah, actually, thank you, John. And again, I'm looking at the chat to see if there's anything in there as well. Please feel free to utilize it. There were two other questions that I really do want to provide some context on, and then I will, but I'll pause at any point to answer a question. One of the questions was, are suburban cities obligated under Texas law to buy from CPS? Could they go into the open market like in Houston? So a couple of things. Probably the first thing I want to reiterate again, this issue was not just a San Antonio issue. This issue was a Texas issue. My daughter I have two daughters, they both live in Houston. One had power the whole time and one did not. And so her experience was very similar, and she had a long-term outage. She hadn't been in her house for very long, but there she was. So I just want to highlight for you that there really wasn't we could see any area of Texas that was excluded. The storm covered the state. It went, the experience was the same. There were challenges with generation all over the state. It wasn't just our generation where we had a plant here, a plant there, with an issue. We ultimately had 86% coverage and uptime in our plants overall, but there are many other utilities across Texas that also had challenges with their plants. So I understand the frustration of thinking that it would have been better if we could have done something that had different access across the state. Our job is to go and provide you the power that you need from the generation that you, in fact, own as customers in our area, and you are included in our certificated area. And when we can't generate that power for you, then we go to the market and get it. We're going to fight for reform and market design, because no matter what, you deserve a better experience and reliability, and you definitely don't deserve to have this other thing that we're having to talk about but work on for you relative to affordability. So this is the market that San Antonio does serve with you. We're going to do our best to rebuild your trust with us. We know, though, this is a whole industry and statewide issue. Are we connected enough as a state? Even if you could go to Houston or Dallas or somewhere else, one of the challenges we have is that Texas is a self-contained market, and whether or not it should be connected to either the eastern or western grids, there are pros and there are cons to it. But if there are pros, we think that discussion happens. So just please know that we understand that that's a point that we have to keep fighting to win your trust back. This is a huge issue. We are going to continue to fight for the things that we think will improve your access to energy at your homes where it's convenient, and at your businesses and at the cities that you run where it's convenient, and work towards that. But we will be some of the biggest champions. You see our name out there probably more than any other utility, because we want reform and we want collaboration across the state, and we want to be your partner as we all look for new solutions for citizens of our communities. The other question was, does CPS Energy carry insurance to prevent the pass-through of extreme costs due to a catastrophic weather failure? We don't have insurance in the sense of, when you can't operate. We actually wouldn't price that type of insurance where you have a business inability to serve, so you can get insurance. That cost for utility was tremendous, but we did price that. We do, though, have different types of things that we did have and utilize. We do hedge. We do use certain products that limit the cost of natural gas. We do have a very successful prepaid gas deal that has already, it helped during the event, but it helps leverage and keep the cost of energy down when we go through any type of experience. And then we also have some physical hedges, meaning we have some natural gas and storage. Probably overall, if you add those two components up, about 30% of our portfolio and need was hedged. As we look at it, we will look at other opportunities to increase the ability to limit and create an insurance type effect on our operations. The challenge with that is insurance policies are very expensive in itself. We'll go back and reprice a pure insurance policy. There's a cost to creating hedging transactions that limit the price of natural gas when you buy it. And there's an overall cost to storing more and more natural gas in the ground. So now, in comparison, I would say that those costs are justified, and we should look at them, more carefully and assume that. But I will say that to date, we had not done that, completely. I mean, do we hedge 50%? Do we hedge 75% or 100%? We need to go get those additional costs and share those with you all, because that will translate into additional overall just average cost of the system. And then there's other costs that we need to incur. Again, the cost of a better outage management system, the cost of better communication systems. And so we definitely want your input about where to prioritize those things, but we will look at them and we will be ready to talk about these options that we're looking at any time that you are ready. So, once again, we're not making any excuses that we can't do better. We obviously can. And our people are passionate about you. We like you not to have to worry about these issues. We have close to $12 billion in assets, from our generating systems to our transmission systems, our distribution systems, and all the things that we do in our call center. But it really is all about people. And we are a service company. And so we want you to have service that you can feel comfortable in and rely in. There are going to be technical solutions that we have to work out. We're going to have to negotiate. We're going to have to look at policy. We're going to have to look at market structure, but that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do for you. The more we can work with you, the more that we can work together as a group, the more that we can hear from you some additional thoughts. It'll continue to fuel, pun intended, our efforts. But I do want you to know that every day we wake up, we think about how to do better and the things that we have to do, and the fight for our customers, the fight to make sure that we are not, as a community, gouged by opportunistic people. And every night we go to bed until we can't work anymore and we're just exhausted. But that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do. And when we have to work around the clock, we do. And again, you have 3,100 employees that really feel passionate about being part of the solution and implementing our own corrective measures, and then being really directly involved in leading the bigger challenges that are in the industry and in the state and in the nation, quite honestly. So those are my closing thoughts. I don't know, John, we have a little bit more time. Any question out there that you see that I can't see?
We don't have any hands raised in the chat feature or question pending. I'll pause for just a moment if anybody has a question. I'd like to take an opportunity as we're closing. We are a 5-member team in your local government relations department. From Velma Corona, who is the glue behind that holds us all together, and then our 2 project managers, Melissa Carrillo-Cox, please wave, Nancy Tabares, please wave, and then our newest addition to the team, Julia Carrillo-Haynes, who has joined us from the Edwards Aquifer Authority. This is your team. We are here to help. We will serve as best we can this community. I want to take a moment to thank everybody who participated, those speakers from Paula, Frank, Paul, and Rudy. Thank you for the questions that were submitted to us. If there are no other questions, that will conclude today's summit. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a pleasant day. It's beautiful outside. Enjoy it.
It is. Bye, and thank you again. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Yes.
Thanks. Be safe.